When Trump levies a 25% car tariff, Canada responds angrily and retaliates. As citizens boycott travel to the U.S., reservations for flights between the U.S. and Canada fall by 70%. Donald Trump's announcement of a 25% tariff on automobile imports from all nations, including Canada, ignites a trade war. Is this merely a political move, or is he starting a new trade war? In addition to having an impact on the automobile sector, this choice significantly exacerbates tensions between the two nearby nations. Why, then, is Canada responding so forcefully? Without hesitation, Prime Minister Mark Carney described it as an outright assault on Canadian workers. Could this be the start of something more serious? Will Canada give in to this pressure, or will they maintain their position? Canada did not stand by and responded to Trump's decision with a strong boycott of travel and commerce. According to the most recent data, reservations for flights between the U.S. and Canada have decreased by as much as 70%. Why are Canadians refusing to visit the United States? How do they feel about this choice? The Buy Canadian Only trend is rapidly gaining traction. Canadians are sharing pictures of themselves buying only domestic goods at supermarkets like Costco. In addition to demonstrating their unity, this action makes a clear statement: we will not submit to oppression. Can the U.S. economy be genuinely affected by a boycott movement? Will we see a significant shift in trade relations between these two countries? Tours change course as domestic travel soars. The surge in domestic travel in Canada is among the most noteworthy responses. Travel to the United States is being canceled in significant numbers, and cross-country tours are selling out. But what is driving Canadians to turn back to their own country instead of traveling to the U.S.? Instead of traveling to the U.S., Canadians are opting to explore their own nation. This is a statement of the country's sovereignty as well as a protest against U.S. policies. Will this shift last long-term, or is it just a temporary change? Are Canadians realizing that they can find amazing experiences right within their own country, and could this become a driving force for growing tourism and a stronger domestic economy in the future? Canada's protests are united. Unlike typical boycotts, Canadian citizens have shown strong unity through protests. Notably in Toronto, a protest took place in front of the U.S. consulate with the slogan "Elbows Up," a symbol of resilience and solidarity. MP Charlie Angus spoke boldly: "We will never be the 51st state of the U.S. We will not kiss the ring of the dictator Trump." This statement shows the determination of Canadians to protect their nation's sovereignty. Can these protests create enough pressure to change U.S. policies? Can this unity become a key factor for Canada to exert greater influence in international relations? Message from the government and citizens. Prime Minister Mark Carney has strongly affirmed that Canada will protect its workers, protect its businesses, and protect the homeland. The government and Canadian citizens are demonstrating an impressive unity in defending the country's national interests. In addition to the boycotts and domestic protests, this movement has gained attention worldwide. Countries like Australia, France, Scotland, and many others have expressed their support for Canada. This shows that Canada is not just protecting its own interests, but also setting an example for other nations. Will this movement inspire other countries to rise up and defend their national rights? Will we see a global wave of resistance? Will Canada truly change the global trade landscape, or will this just be a small fight that won't lead to any major change? What will happen to the Canadian people in this trade war?
Is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States.
Automobile manufacturers have bad news. Trump's 25% tax on the auto sector in Canada, thousands of jobs could be eliminated. Is the automotive industry coming to an end? This trade war is a political conflict as well as a trade conflict. Did you know that the automobile industry accounts for over 30% of Ontario's exports? This means that tens of thousands of jobs are at risk, particularly in industrial cities like Windsor, Hamilton, and Waterloo, where the workers are accustomed to living difficult lives. They need to be protected, and Canada is prepared to defend them. Prime Minister Carney pledged an unyielding response, calling this a flagrant betrayal of the Cosmo trade agreement following NAFTA.
Canadian auto workers don't just build vehicles, they build Canada. And our auto sector has always been there for our country. So in this time of uncertainty and need, Canada will be there for our auto workers.
What will Canada do to protect its workers?
That is why today I'm announcing that the new Liberal government will create the Strategic Response Fund. This is a $2 billion fund that will protect the jobs of workers.
The government has invested $2 billion Canadian dollars in the Strategic Response Fund with the intention of increasing domestic production, decreasing reliance on the United States, and creating a supply chain that is made in Canada. Retaliatory tariffs are being prepared, and every dollar collected from these measures will go directly to Canadian workers who are facing uncertainty. In addition to implementing reforms to the UN Employment Insurance I to protect workers, Canada is also allowing businesses to defer taxes and access large liquidity packages to stay afloat during tough times. What is Donald Trump doing? Many will wonder. Experts contend that this decision will not benefit anyone, despite his claims that these tariffs will restore jobs to the United States. For a long time, the US, Canada, and Mexico have been closely linked in the North American automotive production system. The industry as a whole could collapse if a link in this value chain is cut.
We are building Canada strong. And our actions are supporting the work of nearly 500,000 Canadians who work directly or indirectly in this sector. We're supporting their families. We're supporting their communities. We're supporting this great country. That's the thing that President Trump just doesn't get.
That's the thing that President Trump just doesn't get. This battle is not just about tariffs. Both countries now face difficult choices. Canada could ramp up retaliatory measures and build a more autonomous economy, but because of the disruption in the North American supply chain, the U.S. economy will be affected. In addition to having an impact on businesses and employees, this tariff decision may also cause a severe rift in the two nations' long-standing strategic alliance. How, then, can these two nations come up with a solution? Will Canada take a firm stance or look for a diplomatic solution to safeguard the interests of companies and employees? As the countries become more separated than ever before, what does the future of the North American auto industry hold? And lastly, we cannot ignore the crucial question, who will bear the costs of this conflict? The effects will be felt first by the workers. Millions of people will be left wondering how they will make ends meet as thousands of jobs are lost and industrial cities like Windsor are abandoned. Although the Canadian government is actively looking for ways to help, this crisis may worsen and even impact future generations. And given the U.S. political environment right now, does Trump actually care about long-term stability, or are these merely flimsy political ploys to appeal to voters? There are significant disruptions to the U.S. economy. What effects are new policies having on the country? According to 54% of U.S. voters, the economy is headed in the wrong direction. Wall Street, meanwhile, just had its worst week in 2 years. Concurrently, a flurry of controversy is being generated by a number of new tax laws and stricter immigration regulations. What effects will these shifts have on regular Americans and the economy as a whole? Americans suffer from economic uncertainty. A startling paradox is revealed by a recent survey. The economy continues to be the main issue, even with the president's high approval ratings. 54% of voters, or more than half, are unhappy with the current state of affairs. The cost of living is still high, despite their hopes for lower prices. Home ownership is becoming a far-fetched dream, and inflation is still a concern. The statistics paint a harsh picture. Food costs have increased 6.3% in the last year. Necessities like milk, eggs, and beef have increased 8.5%, 7.2%, and 10.4%, respectively. Major cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Miami are seeing skyrocketing rent increases of 12 to 18%. This goes beyond theory. It's having a significant impact on daily life, and it's not just customers who are suffering. The financial markets are trembling. The largest loss in 2 years occurred last week when the Dow Jones fell 4.2% and the S&P 500 fell 3.8%. Stocks of tech behemoths like Apple, Tesla, and Microsoft plummeted. Experts caution that job security may be the next victim if these trends continue. Layoffs may result from cost-cutting measures taken by businesses, but will new tax laws improve the situation or make it worse? Let's get into the debate. Tax laws either help or hurt. The administration argues that its tax policy is essential for safeguarding American manufacturing, but many businesses and Americans view it as a double-edged sword. The Treasury Department claims that since these new taxes went into effect, raw material costs have increased by 15% to 25% across a variety of industries, with steel, electronics, and the automotive sector being the most affected. In just 6 months, over 5,000 small businesses have declared bankruptcy. Costs can be passed on to customers by large corporations. Not so fortunate are small businesses, and one sector is having a particularly difficult time. Production of electric cars, Tesla and Rivian, must be reduced. The cost of batteries and their components is rapidly increasing. This has a direct negative impact on the economy and the environment for regular consumers by slowing the shift to clean energy. The average U.S. household now pays an additional $1,500 to $2,000 annually to maintain their standard of living due to the 8% increase in retail prices following the new taxes. So, is this tax policy actually helping the economy, or is it making matters worse? As if that weren't enough, a new policy change is creating even more of a commotion. Immigration regulations, economic catastrophe, or security. Although border security has always been a contentious issue, a recent ruling has sparked heated discussion. The government is using the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, which is more than 200 years old, to deport undocumented immigrants, especially those who are suspected of having connections to Venezuelan gangs. The public is divided. Critics warn of severe economic consequences, but 55% of Americans favor tighter border controls. Here's why immigrant labor is essential to the U.S. construction, agriculture, and service sectors. The U.S. has a severe labor shortage, with 20% of workers in these fields lacking proper documentation if they are deported, according to the Labor Department. What follows? Increased labor expenses, more costly goods, and companies having trouble filling positions. Furthermore, over a 3-year period, economists estimate that these mass deportations could reduce the U.S. GDP by 1% to 2%. A decline in government tax revenue puts more strain on public spending. Some claim that these actions will increase national security. Others claim they will put too much strain on local economies, businesses, and courts. One thing is certain, though, this policy will have far-reaching and enduring effects. What impact does this have on the U.S. economy? Then, are we on the verge of recovery, or more serious problems? Keep an eye out. This story's next chapter is just getting started. The U.S. economy is being destroyed by Trump. Even Fox News is no longer able to conceal the fact that the stock market is collapsing.
And look, you could see how the average just plummeted late Monday. That is when Trump made the announcement that the tariffs were coming. It continued on Tuesday as the tariffs were imposed. Of course, then you had...
Let's start with the stock market. Did you know that the Dow Jones has dropped over 1,500 points in the last month? Given that the Dow Jones is the most significant indicator of the state of the U.S. economy, this is no small matter. The shocking thing is that even Fox News, which has consistently backed Trump, is unable to hide this reality any longer. According to the most recent data from Bloomberg, the S&P 500 fell 3.5% last week, the largest decline since the year began. No investor wants to hear this, particularly at a time when the economy is recovering from the pandemic. However, Trump places the blame on the Biden administration rather than confronting the issue directly. What actually occurred then? The effects of Trump's tariff policies are beginning to show. Commodity prices have soared due to supply chain disruptions brought on by trade wars, particularly with China. The market was taken aback by this, which has halted the recovery that the Biden administration is attempting to establish.
And it was
Follow
great.
up and do it?
They did it when I was president. What happened is when Biden was president, they didn't buy any longer. Yeah, because there was nobody to call them. I used to call President Xi. I said, you got to do me a favor. You got to, live up to that agreement. And he was great. He did.